Good morning. Good morning. The year is 1792. The year is 1692. Two companies of the Lord of Argyll's regiment afoot arrive in Glencoe. They carry orders from the government to quarter amongst the Clan MacDonald's homes in lieu of taxes owed to the government. Their real purpose is vengeance. The clan chief of the MacDonalds had been late to sign the peace treaty with King William the year prior, and now the Argylls had come to seek their retribution. On the evening of February 13th, they arose from their beds and descended on the clan chief and his men, killing the chief of the clan and 37 of his men, before putting every home in the glen to the torch, and driving the women and children into the surrounding mountains to face exposure and death. The massacre of Glencoe was immortalized in the 1960s in a ballad written by John McDermott, later made famous by the Corys. MacDonald's of Glencoe. The Jacobite uprisings that began in 1688 and ended at the Battle of Culloden in 1746 are the topic of many of the story, song, and ballad in Scotland. Most notably, The Roses of Prince Charlie, another tune written by the Corys. And much earlier than that, Ye Jacobites by Name, a song collected, rewritten, and arranged by the immortal Robert Burns. It originally depicted the conflicts, the war and strife of Scotland, but under Robert's pen, it became an ode to humanism and the greater struggle of the brotherhood of men. Akron.
Pipes and drums. When it rolls. 1, 2.
After the Battle of Culloden in 1746, over 2/3 of the Highlands population was cleared from their lands. Many sought refuge in the coasts, working in factories and fisheries, supplying the British Army. Others chose immigration to North America, the Caribbean, Australia, and New Zealand. And others yet, the sons of former noblemen in the Highlands, chose to join with the Highland regiments. Originally only the Black Watch companies, later they were expanded to include such famous regiments as the 44th Highlanders and the 78th Frasers. They would see action in the 7 Years' War, wresting control of North America from the French. The events of that war are depicted in the famous novel by James Fraser, The Last of the Mohicans. Later adapted into film, its primary orchestral score is based on a tune by the famous Scottish songwriter Dougie MacLean. This was later adapted further into a tune for the pipes by the former pipe sergeant of the Western Australian Police Pipe Band, Timothy Cummings, the Gale. When the Highland regiments arrived in North America, they were still wearing the Great Highland kilt. They carried with them muskets and broadswords, pistols, and the full accompaniment of Highland Guard. They found themselves overdressed and ill-equipped for the terrain of the North American wilderness. Quickly, they abandoned the Great Kilt and transformed it into the kilbay that we wear today. Broadswords became dirks. Tomahawks were adopted and moccasins worn. And the Highlanders quickly adapted themselves to the Ranger-style warfare of North America. Much of what they did on that campaign determined the sort of dress we wear today in this pipe band. And now, Mr. Barton would like to tell you a little bit more about our dress.
Thank you. Our uniform in the band is a military dress, and this is what the military would wear. In the kilt, you have a sporn that you wear out in the front. And that, in the olden days, was a purse because there's no pockets in a kilt. And the British Army didn't want their troops to bulge out their pockets on their uniforms because it didn't look right. So you had the sporn. We also carry a dirk, which I don't have with me today, but it's a small sword, and it's used to cut firewood, also cut your game up. In the dirk, there's a knife and a fork, so you can eat. Everything that the Scots wore was very useful in all of their doings. On the kilt, if they're in full dress uniform, there's a plaid. And the plaid was used as a blanket. So when you were camping out in the woods, you didn't have to have a backpack. You could just wrap up in your plaid. The spats that we wear protect the hose because they're all wool. And wool was hard to mill when you were in a foreign country, so you had to send all the way back to England to get it. And in those days, it was a sailing ship that did it, and it could take almost a year to get a replacement part. The drummers used to wear also a leather apron over their kilt. That was so that they didn't wear out the kilt. They wore out the leather apron. But now I'll tell you a little bit about the drums. The drums that we have are different from the high school snare drums that you have heard. They're double snared. There's a snare on the top and a snare on the bottom. And the heads are made out of Kevlar, the same thing a bulletproof vest is made out of. And this gives it a nice, sharp tone. Thank you. Then we have the tenor drum. I'll get out of the way because she swings. We call her a swinging tenor, and she does play the tunes and accent parts to give it a little better sound when we're marching. And she is called the air conditioner of the band. Now we get to the heart and soul of the drum corps, and that's the bass drum. The bass drum not only keeps the tempo that we play, but when I signal with the mace, we can stop and play a different tune. The bass drum repeats that signal, so all of the pipers and drummers know what we're going to do. And we change tempos on the march. The bass drum signals that. And when we're ready to stop, the bass drum signals that also. That's so the pipers can get all of the air out of the bag so it doesn't sound like a bunch of geese landing on a pond. Now we get to the bagpipes. Oh, the bagpipes are exactly what they're called, a bag with pipes on it. The pipes on his shoulders are called drones, and that gives you the deep droning sound. The pipe that he has in his mouth is called a blowpipe. It fills up the bag. There's a check valve in there that keeps the air from coming out until he strikes in. And the other hand that he has there, that's called the chanter. And that's where all of the music comes from with the bagpipes. So when he gets ready to strike in, you know, that starts the drones. and he squeezes a little harder, and then the air comes out the chanter and goes through a great big reed that's down there that takes a lot of pressure to run. And that's what we have on the drums and the bagpipes.
There's another drum.
No, there isn't another
Yes,
drum.
there is.
And what's that drum called?
This is a doumbek.
It's a doumbek.
It's an Indian drum. It's hourglass shaped. Most of the time the heads are animal skin or hide. I've got a plastic one. This is going to be an upgrade soon from this. There's different sizes. The bigger ones are a little bit deeper. The smaller ones are a bit of a higher sound. Yeah.
And it gives more of a balance to the drum corps when we're playing certain tunes. So now we'll go back to. If you have any questions on the uniforms or the instruments, come and see us. We're outside the main gate, or after the show. The show will be right out the gate, and we have CDs for sale. Someplace. Oh, they're over there. And you can pick up more music that we play other than what we've been playing here tonight. Thank you.
And now for something completely different. Mr. Barton, Scotch on the Rocks.
Scotch on the Rocks. You ready?
Robert Burns, the heaven-taught plowman. He was not only inspired by the war and strife of Scotland, but also by its natural beauty, its mist-covered lochs, the bluebells, perennial flower that blooms in spring in Scotland, the rowan tree that's planted at the doors of homes and gates all along Scotland, a lighthouse of wood to lead the weary traveler home, to ward off the witch and the fairy. It was this land that Burns was born in and raised, as an impoverished farmer, and later as one of the greatest poets and bards of Scottish history. He would go on to write such immortal lines. Oh, my love is like the flower newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. So fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I. And I will love you still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. And I will love you still, my love, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well a while. And I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 miles.